Imagine being so honest that it cost you everything: your friends, your wife, and even your dignity. Adi, a struggling Uber driver in Lagos, returned a forgotten bag filled with 100 million naira, only to be mocked, abandoned, and left with just 10,000 naira as a reward. But fate had other plans, because when another rich passenger left behind a bag full of dollars, Adi's integrity was tested once again. This time, the reward was beyond his wildest dreams. But by then, the people who betrayed him were the ones left begging. Was honesty truly worth it? Watch till the end to find out. Adi woke up before dawn, just as he did every day. The tiny ceiling fan in his one-room apartment barely worked, but at least it kept the mosquitoes away. He stretched, rubbed his tired eyes, and sat up. His wife, Tolu, was still sleeping beside him, their 3-year-old daughter curled up at the foot of the mattress. His body ached. His bones felt heavy. The stress of driving in Lagos traffic every day was killing him slowly, but he had no choice. He needed to work. He got up quietly, trying not to wake them, and stepped outside. The compound smelled of wet sand and burnt firewood. The air was thick with the scent of early morning cooking from neighbours preparing pap and akara. Adi sighed and leaned against his car, a small, beaten Toyota Corolla. It wasn't much, but it was his source of survival. He had been driving Uber for 5 years, and while it put food on the table, it wasn't enough to escape the poverty that clung to him like a shadow. Every morning before starting work, Adi had a ritual. He would place his hand on the car and whisper a prayer. "God, I no get anybody, I no get connection, but I get my integrity. Bless my hustle." Then he opened the car, started the engine, and drove into the madness of Lagos. Being an Uber driver in Lagos was not easy. The roads were a nightmare, potholes deep enough to swallow a car, reckless danfo drivers who thought traffic rules were just decoration, and policemen who saw every driver as an ATM. But the worst part, the passengers. Some were rude, some were impatient, some refused to pay the full fare, acting as if he was their servant. And then there were the rich ones. The ones who looked at him like he was nothing. They would sit in the back seat, scrolling through their phones, ignoring him completely. When they spoke, it was with an air of arrogance, like talking to him was a waste of their time. But Adi never let it bother him. He had seen worse. He had endured hunger, betrayal, and disappointment. He had learned long ago that character was everything. His friends didn't understand. "Adi, you too do," Kola would say after work, sitting at their regular drinking joint in Surulere. "This your honesty no go put food for your table." Laddie would shake his head. "See, Lagos no be for foolish people. If person forget money for your car, just claim am. You no go ever blow if you continue like this." Adi would just smile. "If I steal today, wet and go make me different from thief." His friends always laughed. "You no get sense, Adi. You go suffer for this life." But Adi didn't care. He had his principles. Adi's honesty had cost him a lot. 2 years ago, he had found a passenger's gold wristwatch in his car, a Rolex. He could have sold it for millions, but he tracked the owner down and returned it. The man barely said thank you. Last year, a woman left her purse in his car. Inside was 500,000 naira in cash. Adi returned it. The woman was so shocked she only gave him 2,000 naira as a reward. "Now this kind thing day make life hard for you," Kola said when he heard. "You fit done use that money rent better house, buy new car." Adi shook his head. "That money no be my own," Kola sighed. "Your own honesty go kill you one day." And then there was Tolu. At first, she had admired his integrity. She used to tell people, "My husband is different. He is a good man, But as the years passed and their poverty remained, her admiration turned to frustration. "Adi, when will things change?" she asked one night as they lay in the dark. "God's time is the best," Adi answered. Tolu exhaled sharply. God's time, since we marry, not only God's time you day talk. We no go wait forever." Adi sighed. "You no go understand." She didn't reply. But in her silence, Adi could hear the disappointment, the exhaustion. He knew she was getting tired. He could feel her slipping away. But he didn't know that the real storm was coming, one that would shake his life to the core. Adi wiped sweat from his forehead as he slowed down in front of a luxurious mansion in Ikoyi. The sun was setting, casting long shadows on the high gates and well-trimmed hedges. The air smelled of freshly cut grass, a rare scent in Lagos. Sitting in the back seat of his Toyota Corolla was a nervous-looking man in a tailored navy blue suit. The man had barely said a word since he entered the car. The only sound had been the constant ringing of his phone and his sharp, hushed whispers. "Yes, I have it," the man had said into the phone. "Calm down, I'll be there soon." Adi had seen many types of passengers, talkative ones, rude ones, silent ones, but this man was different. Something about him seemed off. He kept glancing out the window like someone was watching him. Finally, the ride ended. The man exhaled sharply, pulled out a wad of 500 naira notes, and handed Adi N 5,000 without even waiting for the Uber app to confirm the fare. "Keep the change," he muttered, then grabbed his briefcase and stepped out. Adi watched as he hurried toward the giant black gate. It opened immediately, and before Adi could even blink, the man had disappeared inside. Adi shook his head and muttered, "People and their wahala." He reached for his phone to end the trip. But as he turned to the back seat to check if it was clean, his heart nearly stopped. Sitting on the seat was a black leather bag. It was heavy. Adi's throat went dry. Slowly, almost as if afraid of what he might see, he unzipped the bag just a little. And that was when his whole world tilted. Inside the bag were bundles and bundles of crisp, fresh naira notes. Adi's hands trembled. His heart pounded so loudly that he could hear it in his ears. This was not ordinary money. This was a fortune. His fingers shook as he reached for one of the stacks and counted. Each bundle was 1 million naira, and there were hundreds of them. A cold chill ran down his spine. This was at least 100 million naira. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. His mind screamed two things at once. "Adi, this is your breakthrough. Adi, this money no be your own." He stared at the money, his thoughts spinning out of control. 100 million naira. It could change his life forever. No more struggle. No more driving in Lagos traffic. No more insults from passengers. He could buy a house, a new car, start a business, send his daughter to the best school in Nigeria, Tolu. His wife's voice echoed in his head. "Adi, I'm tired of suffering." This was the kind of money that would bring her back. She would run into his arms, calling him a hero. His friends, the ones who laughed at him for being too honest, would finally respect him. "If I take this money, who go no?" His hands tightened around the bag. He looked around, his eyes scanning the street. The road was empty. No cameras, no witnesses. This was it. A single moment that could change his destiny. His conscience screamed at him. "Adi, you no be thief. Nobody go no, but God go no." He let out a deep, shaky breath. He grabbed his phone, scrolled to the last trip details, and called the man. The phone rang once, then twice. On the third ring, the man picked up. His voice was frantic. Please tell me you have my bag." Ade closed his eyes and said the words that sealed his fate. "Yes, sir. I have it." For a few seconds there was complete silence on the other end. Then the man let out a long, trembling sigh. Oh my God, please bring it to me now." Ade's throat was dry. "Where should I meet you, sir?" The man gave him an address, a private lounge in Victoria Infex. Ade took another deep breath, started his engine, and drove into the night. The drive to Victoria Island felt like the longest journey of Ade's life. His hands were sweaty on the steering wheel. His heart wouldn't stop hammering. A small voice in his head kept whispering, "Turn around. Go home. Forget this man. Take the money and run." But he kept driving. When he arrived at the lounge, the man was already waiting outside. His suit jacket was gone, his sleeves rolled up, his forehead glistening with sweat. He looked like someone who had just survived a heart attack. Ade stepped out of the car, grabbed the bag, and handed it over. The man grabbed it like a starving man grabbing food. He quickly unzipped it, checked the contents, and let out a deep sigh of relief. "You don't know what you've done for me," he said, his voice shaky. Ade swallowed hard. "It's all right, sir." The man reached into his pocket, pulled out a small bundle of cash, and handed it to Ade. "Here, take this for your honesty." Ade's hands trembled as he accepted it. His eyes darted to the money. Maybe it was 1 million naira, maybe even 10 million. His breath hitched as he quickly counted the notes. Then his whole body went cold. 10,000 naira. That was all. Ade forced himself to look up at the man who was already walking away. A lump formed in his throat. This was his reward. 10,000 naira for returning 100 million. His chest tightened. He felt lightheaded. He could have changed his entire life. He could have built a future for his daughter. But instead, he was standing in the middle of a dimly lit street, clutching 10,000 naira, while the man disappeared into the night with 100 million. Ade blinked hard. He felt like screaming, like crying, like punching something. But instead, he closed his eyes, took a deep, shaky breath, and whispered, "God, I hope I did the right thing." Then he turned around, got back into his old car, and drove home, to nothing, to poverty, to Tolu's anger, to mockery from his friends. But somewhere deep in his heart, a voice whispered, "One day, Ade, one day your honesty will pay." Ade drove home in silence. The streets of Lagos were alive as usual, hawkers running between cars, danfo drivers shouting at passengers, the blaring horns of impatient motorists. But to Ade, everything felt distant, like he was moving in slow motion. His grip on the steering wheel was tight. His eyes burned, but he refused to let the tears fall. 10,000 naira. That was all he got for returning 100 million naira. A part of him wanted to scream. Another part of him wanted to turn around, find that man, and demand justice. But deep down he knew nothing would change. This was his life. An honest man in a corrupt world. By the time he reached his neighborhood in Mushin, his stomach was empty, his body exhausted. The moment he stepped out of the car, he could feel the stares. People had already heard. News in Lagos traveled faster than fire. Kola and Laddie were sitting outside a small buka, drinking beer and eating pepper soup. The moment they saw Ade, they burst into laughter. "See our ogre," Kola jeered, clapping his hands. "Ade, the richest poor man in Lagos." Laddie nearly fell off his chair laughing. "Chai, 100 million naira. And you return am? For 10,000? Ade, you day mental." The other men around the buka joined in, shaking their heads in pity. "Guy, na village people they follow you. Your destiny help a don pass you by. If na me, I go use that money vanish." Ade clenched his fists. His chest burned with shame. But he refused to argue. He had no strength left. He turned and walked toward his small apartment, ignoring their laughter. But the real battle was waiting inside. Aide entered the house, and immediately he felt the tension. Tolu stood in the middle of the room, arms folded, her eyes dark with fury. Their 3-year-old daughter, Amara, sat on the floor, playing with an empty plastic bottle. Ade sighed and shut the door behind him. "Tolu, tell me say no be true," she snapped. Ade's shoulders sank. "It's true." Tolu's breath hitched. Her hands trembled. "Ade, you returned 100 million naira." Ade nodded slowly. "It wasn't mine." The words sent her into a rage. She grabbed the nearest thing, a plastic cup, and flung it across the room. It hit the wall and fell to the floor. "Ade, I done suffer for this marriage," she screamed. Ade sighed. "Tolu, please calm down." "Calm down." Her voice cracked. "We live in one small room. We can barely afford food. Amara needs new clothes. I don't even remember the last time I fixed my hair properly." Ade rubbed his temples. He was exhausted. "I did what was right." Tolu let out a bitter laugh. "Right? Right for who? Because no only you day suffer." Ade's heart ached. "Tolu, money way no be your own no fit bless you." Tolu's nostrils flared. "Forget that nonsense. How many rich men for this country get clean money? You think Chief Williams, Dangote, or all those politicians get money by returning lost things?" Ade said nothing. Tolu's hands shook as she pointed at him. "You are a fool, Ade." His heart clenched. Tolu had never spoken to him like this before. She stepped closer, her voice low and filled with pain. "I waited for you to change our lives. I believed in your honesty, but honesty no go put food for table." Ade's lips parted, but no words came out. Then she dropped the final bomb. "I can't do this anymore." Ade felt like the ground had been ripped from under his feet. His voice came out shaky. "Tolu, what are you saying?" Tolu swallowed hard, looking away. "I'm leaving, Ade." The words cut through him like a knife. He stepped forward. "Tolu, please, don't do this." She shook her head, tears running down her cheeks. "I have to think about Amara. She deserves better than this life." Ade felt his chest tighten. His hands shook as he reached for her, but she stepped back. She picked up a small bag, already packed. His heart dropped. You planned this?" Tolu wiped her tears. "I made up my mind the moment I heard what you did." She bent down, lifted Amara into her arms, and kissed the child's forehead. Ade stared at his daughter, his vision blurry with tears. "Tolu, don't take my daughter away from me." Tolu sniffed, adjusting Amara on her hip. "She needs a future. I can't let her grow up watching you make foolish decisions." Ade swallowed a lump in his throat. "Where will you go?" Tolu looked away. "My sister's place. She said she can help me find work." Ade felt his knees go weak. His world was crumbling in front of him. Tolu walked to the door, paused and turned back. Her eyes were cold. "You will never be rich, Ade," she said. "You will die poor because of your stupid honesty." Then she opened the door and walked out. Ade stood there, frozen, as the door slammed shut. The silence in the room was deafening. His legs gave out, and he sank to the floor, burying his face in his hands. The weight of everything crushed him: his poverty, the mockery of his friends, the loss of his wife and daughter. For the first time in years, Ade wept. He wept for the life he had lost. He wept for the family that had left him. And deep inside him, a question burned. Did I really do the right thing? That night, as he lay on his thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, he whispered the same prayer he had said every morning. "God, I no get anybody. I no get connection, but I get my integrity. Please, don't let me die like this." But as sleep took him, he couldn't shake the feeling that honesty had failed him. At least, that's what he thought. Because fate was not done with him yet.